crashing, hit a wall. Right now I need a miracle. Hurry up now, I need a miracle. Stranded, reaching out. I call your name but you're not around. I say your name but you're not around. I need you, I need you, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling, I hope that you'll be when I need you the most. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. No, don't let me down, don't let me down. Don't let me down, down, down. Don't let me down, don't let me down, down, down. Running out of time. I really thought you were on my side, but now there's nobody by my side. I need you, I need you, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling, I hope that you'll be when I need you the most. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. No, don't let me down, don't let me down. Don't let me down, down, down. Don't let me down, don't let me down, down, down. Whoa, I think I'm losing my mind now, yeah. Whoa, I think I'm losing my mind now. I need you, I need you, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling, I hope that you'll be here when I need you the most. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. No, don't let me down. Yeah, don't let me down. Yeah, don't let me down. Don't let me down, oh no. So don't let me down, don't let me down, oh no. Don't let me down, down, down. You're the light, you're the night, you're the color of my blood. You're the cure, you're the pain, you're the only thing I wanna touch. Never knew that it could mean so much, so much. You're the fear, I don't care, 'cause I've never been so high. Follow me to the dark, let me take you past our satellites. You can see the world you've brought to life, to life. So love me like you do, love me like you do. Love me like you do, love me like you do. Touch me like you do, oh, touch me like you do. What are you waiting for? Fading in, fading out, on the edge of paradise. Every inch of your skin is a holy grail I've gotta find. Only you can set my heart on fire, on fire. Yeah, I'll let you set the pace, 'cause I'm not thinking straight. My head's spinning around, I can't see clear no more. What are you waiting for? Love me like you do. 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 Touch me like you do. And touch me like you do. What are you waiting for? Yeah, I'll let you set the pace, 'cause I'm not thinking straight. My head's spinning around, I can't see clear no more. What are you waiting for? Love me like you do. 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 Touch me like you do. Touch me like you do. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I let it fall, my heart, and as it fell, you rose to claim it. It was dark, and I was over, until you kissed my lips and just saved me. My hands, they're strong, but my knees were far too weak to stand in your arms without falling to your feet. 'Cause there's a side to you that I never knew. All the things you'd say, they were never true in the.
그 샴페인 누가 갖고 왔지?
당신이요.
아 그래.
음식 주문 누가 했지? 진.
안식 매니저님.
To the rain, watched it pour as I touched your face. When it burned, well, I cried 'cause I heard it screaming out your name. When I lay.
처럼 저 때 모였는데 제가 입학식 때 고등학교 입학식 때 멤버들이랑 같이 있었어. 저는 이미 데뷔를 한 상태였어가지고.
그렇지. 사실 뭐 어버 키웠지. 내가 어버 키웠지.
넌 나왔지 않냐?
그때부터 저는
Nothing is better, 'cause there's a side to you that I never knew. All the things you'd say, they were never true in the games you'd play. You would always win. But I set fire to the rain, watched it pour as I touched your face. When it burned, well, I cried 'cause I heard it screaming out your name. I set fire to the rain, and I threw us into the flames. When it felt something died, 'cause I knew that was the last time. Sometimes I wake up by the dawn.
무대에 서고 했던 친구였어가지고 멤버들이 항상 함께 해줬었어요.
정말 밥도 내가 다 사줬지.
정말 밤 내가 챙겨줬지.
Myself from looking for you. But I set fire to the rain, watched it pour as I touched your face. When it burned, well, I cried 'cause I heard it were never true, never true. In the games you'd play, you would always win, always win. But I set fire to the rain, watched it pour as I touched your face. If you go now, please leave the light on. Just say goodbye now and leave. With you gone now, you've turned the right to wrong. It's getting hard now to breathe. It goes on and on, but not in my head. This time, when the lights die and there's nothing left to say, that's when you'll need me. If I break down and you see me fading out, I know enough now to make it right. If I don't stop, I just keep on waiting up. I know enough to know I'll never make it right. It goes on and on, but not in my head. This time, where the lights die and there's nothing left to say, that's when you'll need me. This time, where the lights die and there's no one else to blame, that's when you'll need me. And now, with the lights turned down and your eyes half open, I know you don't see me when I'm standing out. If you just turn around and keep your eyes wide open, I know you might feel me here. I know you don't see me, you don't feel me, but keep your eyes wide open, your eyes wide open. I know you don't see me, you don't feel me, but keep your eyes wide open, your eyes wide open. This time, where the lights die and there's nothing left to say, that's when you'll need me. This time, where the lights die and there's no one else to blame, that's when you'll need me. I know you don't see me. Loving and fighting, accusing, denying. I can't imagine a world with you gone. The joy and the chaos, the demons were made up. I'd be so lost if you left me alone. You locked yourself in the bathroom, lying on the floor when I break through. I pull you in to feel your heartbeat. Can you hear me screaming, please don't leave me? Hold on, I still want you. Come back, I still need you.
Let me take your hand, I'll make it right. I swear to love you all my life. Hold on, I still need you. Long endless highway, you're silent beside me. Driving a nightmare I can't escape from. Helplessly praying, the light isn't fading. Hiding the shock and the chill in my bones. They took you away on the table. I pace back and forth as you lay still. They pull you in to feel your heartbeat. Can you hear me screaming, please don't leave me? Hold on, I still want you. Come back, I still need you. Let me take your hand, I'll make it right. I swear to love you all my life. Hold on, I still need you. I don't wanna let go. I know I'm not that strong. I just wanna hear you saying, baby, let's go home. Let's go home. Yeah, I just wanna take you home. Hold on, I still want you. Come back, I still need you.
Yellow diamonds in the light, and we're standing side by side as your shadow crosses mine. What it takes to come alive. It's the way I'm feeling, I just can't deny. But I gotta let it go. We found love in a hopeless place. 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 Shine a light through an open door. Love and life I will divide. Turn away cause I need you more. Feel the heartbeat in my mind. It's the way I'm feeling, I just can't deny. But I gotta let it go. We found love in a hopeless place. 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 Yellow diamonds in the light, and we're standing side by side as your shadow crosses mine. We found love in a hopeless place. We found love in a hopeless place. We found love in a hopeless place. We found love in a hopeless place.
요리도 해먹고 있습니다.
뭐 해 먹었습니까?
저 최근에 된장 트리캔.
아, 된장 찌개 맛있죠.
It's been 2 weeks of rain in the city of sun. There's been 2 weeks of sadness, I don't remember one. Been awake, feeling better after coming undone. Let it rain, let it rain. I feel the waves crashing over me. Take all of the worries and drift away. There's been 2 weeks of rain in the city of sun. Memories we forget all that we'd ever done. We're not afraid of what we could be. Runaways, runaways. I feel the waves crashing over me. Take all